Have you ever whispered Bloody Mary's name in the mirror? Have you ever heard the tale of the killer hiding in the back seat? What about Bigfoot, Mothman, or the Loch Ness Monster? Urban legends are everywhere, but where do these modern myths come from, and why do we believe them? Search Urban Legends in your chosen podcast provider and join me, Luke Mordew, as I retell the stories and uncover their history, their origins, and dark or curious truths that may lie within.
Hi there, and welcome to Out There, a Cryptid podcast. I'm Josh, and today we're talking about presidents, first ladies, foreign leaders, even pets, who have all reported eerie encounters inside America's most famous residence, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, better known as the White House. Might just be the most haunted house in the nation. Let's dive in.
Hey guys, it's CJ. I wanted to pop in here and tell you all that we now have a website. OutThereCryptids.com is now a central hub for everything out there. No longer do you have to go to our Instagram bio for the Discord or Patreon links. Simply go to OutThereCryptids.com and you'll find easy access to our Discord, Patreon, TikTok, Instagram, X, and even more. You can listen to your favorite episodes, give us direct feedback, or even order my ebook, Dear Editor. OutThereCryptids.com gives you quick and easy access to our Patreon, where we've started a new show, Out There After Dark, where you join me by the campfire and listen to scary stories from Reddit. Episodes of After Dark release bi-weekly and is available for all Weird Club tiers. Starting in November, we're also joining YouTube. Episodes will be posted daily, starting with Josh's very first episode all the way until it's caught up with the main show. Thank you guys for listening, and don't forget to check out OutThereCryptids.com. Josh, take it away.
We'll get into the ghosts of the White House right after this. Before we dive into the hauntings, we've got to talk about the history of the White House itself, because to really understand the ghosts, you have to understand the house. The story starts back in 1792, when Irish-born architect James Hoban was chosen to design the White House, following the grand city plans envisioned by George Washington and Pierre-Charles L'Enfant. Washington himself never lived there. John Adams became the first president to move in the year 1800. From the very beginning, this wasn't just a home. It was a stage for politics, power, and history in the making. Unlike any other house in America, the White House was built by enslaved laborers, immigrants, and free black workers, which is a legacy that sits heavy on its foundation. And almost immediately, the place started collecting stories. Abigail Adams, John's wife, famously used the East Room to hang laundry because it was the driest, sunniest part of the house. Some say you can still smell soap or wet clothes there to this day. Just 14 years after the first family moved in, the White House almost didn't survive. In 1814, during the War of 1812, British troops stormed Washington and set the White House on fire. Only the outer walls survived, and it had to be rebuilt, again by James Hoban. Some have claimed to see a person in an old British uniform storming the lawn at night, carrying a torch toward the White House. But when they blink, it's gone, as if nothing was ever there. Of course, the fire of the White House left a mark in history, but it also could have laid the groundwork for this location to be filled with ghosts. Over the years, the house grew and changed. Monroe brought in a French-style decor, Andrew Jackson added plumbing and heat, Teddy Roosevelt gave us the West Wing. Every renovation seemed to stir something up, and with each president, the White House became more than just a residence. It became a living, breathing piece of American history. By the time Abraham Lincoln moved into the White House, the mansion was over 60 years old, and the weight of the Civil War filled its rooms with grief and tension. After his young son, Willie Lincoln, died in the house in February of 1862, Mary Todd Lincoln turned to spiritualism in a profound way. She invited a circle of Georgetown-based mediums into the White House and reportedly hosted up to 8 seances in the Red Room. During these seances, Mary believed she was communicating with Willie, and sometimes even her other lost son, Eddie Lincoln. She told her half-sister that, quote, "Willie lives. He comes to me every night and stands at the foot of the bed with the same sweet, adorable smile that he always had," end quote. Some of the mediums claimed that during the seances, President Lincoln himself attended, and messages from beyond urged him to pursue his highest calling. Among them, the belief that the Emancipation Proclamation would become the crowning achievement of his presidency. Friends of the First Lady described the lights dimming, soft knocking, furniture shifting without being touched, all during these seances. In many ways, this chapter marked the White House's transformation from a seat of power into what students of the paranormal now call a thin place, a spot where the living world and the spirit world brush shoulders. Mary's grief, the scope of the war, and the pressure of the presidency converged here, and in the quiet of the Red Room, the first recorded hauntings of the mansion took root. Fast forward to the 1940s, and the White House was literally falling apart. Floors sagged, walls cracked, chandeliers swayed dangerously. Harry Truman had to gut the entire inside and rebuild it with steel beams. Even he admitted that the place was haunted. Truman wrote letters about hearing footsteps in the halls late at night when no one else was around. Today, the White House has 132 rooms, 35 bathrooms, and 6 full levels. Every president since John Adams has lived there, and every one of them has added another layer of history, tragedy, or mystery to its walls. And maybe that's why so many people say it's haunted. Because in a house that's seen fires, war, deaths, and the weight of American history, the past isn't so easy to let go of. So, now that we've laid the groundwork, let's get into the hauntings themselves. The very first ghost story told, tied to the White House, comes from none other than Abigail Adams. When the White House first opened in 1800, it wasn't the bustling, polished residence we picture today. It was drafty, half-finished, and barely furnished. President John Adams and his wife, Abigail, moved in anyway, determined to make the place feel like home. Like we talked about earlier, Abigail used the cavernous East Room as her laundry space. She would hang wet clothes there to dry, letting them soak up with what little warmth filtered in through the windows. Imagine it, the First Lady of the United States, pacing back and forth in a grand but empty chamber, arms heavy with linens, the air sharp with the scent of soap and damp fabric. It seems Abigail never left that chore behind. For generations, White House staff have reported the unmistakable smell of wet laundry and lavender wafting through the East Room, even when no one is near. Some even claim to glimpse her figure, arms outstretched, carrying sheets to be hung. She doesn't terrify exactly, but she unsettles. It's as though the White House remembers those earliest, humblest days, and reminds us that beneath all the politics and ceremony, it has always been a lived-in home. And maybe that's why her ghost endures, not to scare, but to remind us that even the most powerful house in the nation once echoed with sounds of chores, the smell of soap, and the quiet footsteps of a woman simply trying to keep her family's life in order. after Abigail Adams, one of the earliest hauntings tied to the White House comes from a much darker chapter in American history, the War of 1812. Like we learned earlier in the episode, in 1814, British troops marched into Washington, D.C. and set fire to the White House. And by the time the smoke cleared, the interior was completely gutted. Only the outer walls stood. That kind of destruction doesn't just disappear. It lingers. And according to legend, one of the British soldiers who carried out the attack never left. Witnesses over the years have claimed to see a lone figure roaming the White House grounds at night, clutching a torch. Some say the soldier reappears on especially stormy nights when the wind whistles through the trees and the house itself seems to creak under the pressure, as if the building remembers its own near death. Another spirit from those early years is none other than Andrew Jackson, one of the most hot-tempered presidents in American history. Jackson was a fighter, literally, a man who carried dueling scars on his body and refused to back down from any challenge. He filled the White House with that same combative energy, and apparently that energy has never faded. His old bedroom, now known as the Rose Room, is said to be one of the most active haunted spots in the building. Mary Todd Lincoln herself swore she heard Jackson's heavy boots stomping up and down the floorboards. She even reported bursts of raucous laughter and strings of curses echoing in the dead of night. Staff have described a suffocating intensity in that room, as though Jackson's temper still simmers in the air. It's as if the general turned president refuses to be forgotten, staking his claim to that house he once occupied. Some of the hauntings may have been encouraged, knowingly or unknowingly, by the residents themselves. Mary Todd Lincoln, for instance, famously held those seances in the White House in an effort to communicate with her late son Willie. These gatherings were more than private grieving. They may have amplified the house's reputation as a place where the veil between the worlds is thin. Other presidents and first families dabbled in spiritualism or entertained the possibility of ghosts, and it's easy to imagine how such beliefs could heighten sensitivity to strange occurrences. Over time, the White House may have become what mediums call a spiritual magnet, a place where residual energy and the echoes of past lives converge, giving even skeptics pause when they hear footsteps in empty corridors. And here's the thing, these aren't just isolated ghost stories. They set the stage for what becomes a whole pattern inside the White House. Some spirits, like the British soldier, seem to embody moments of national trauma, etched into the house like the burn marks that never fade. Others, like Jackson, feel more personal, almost like echoes of personality too strong to die. From here, the sightings only get stranger and more detailed. Some ghosts show themselves in fleeting glimpses, a shadow, a scent, a footstep. Others anchor themselves to certain rooms, certain objects, as if replaying the same story again and again. More on the ghosts of the White House right after this. Of course, there's the most famous White House ghost of them all, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln's spirit isn't just another ghost story in the hallways. He's the one most consistently seen, most vividly described, not just by White House staff, but by presidents, foreign dignitaries, even visiting royalty. His haunting is so enduring, so well documented, that it almost deserves its own book. But for now, let's give Lincoln the attention he deserves, because his ghost alone could fill an entire episode. President Theodore Roosevelt himself claimed to have seen Lincoln's ghost, adding presidential weight to the legend. Even members of White House staff weren't immune. Dwight Eisenhower's press secretary, James Haggerty, and Lady Bird Johnson's press secretary, Liz Carpenter, both admitted they often felt Lincoln's presence in the mansion. These weren't supernatural ghost hunters. They were professional, trusted figures working at the highest levels of government. And yet, even they couldn't shake the sense that Lincoln was still pacing the halls. First Lady Grace Coolidge in the 1920s even said she saw Lincoln standing at a window in a yellow oval room, staring out as if he was still keeping watch over a divided nation. World leaders have claimed to encounter him too. Winston Churchill had perhaps the most famous run-in. During World War II, Churchill was staying at the White House. One night, after a hot bath and with a cigar in hand, he walked into his room completely naked, and there, by the fireplace, was Abraham Lincoln. Churchill, always quick with a line, reportedly said, quote, "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage." End quote. Lincoln vanished instantly. Then there's Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, who stayed at the White House during the Roosevelt years. One night, she heard a knock at her door, opened it, and came face to face with Lincoln's ghost, tall and spectral, in his top hat. She fainted on the spot. Even Eleanor Roosevelt believed the spirit of Lincoln lingered. She often worked late in the Lincoln bedroom and said she could feel his presence watching over her. Staff in the Roosevelt White House also claimed to hear footsteps outside the bedroom when no one was there. Margaret Truman, daughter of President Harry S. Truman, had her own unnerving experience in the Lincoln bedroom. One night, she was awoken by the sound of rapping at the door and became convinced it was Lincoln himself. She later told the story in interviews, adding her voice to the long line of credible witnesses who swore they'd encountered the great emancipator in ghostly form. And President Truman himself didn't shy away from the idea that the White House was haunted. In a letter to his wife, he wrote about being awakened by phantom knocks at the door. When his daughter teased him for believing in ghosts, he shot back that he was sure they were real, and that he wasn't afraid of them. Truman even joked that old Andrew Jackson could probably teach him some colorful swear words, while Grover Cleveland might offer choice insults for political rivals. He ended by saying he would lock his doors if any of the old coots in the pictures out in the hall wanted to step out of their frames for a chat. Coming from a sitting president, it's a moment that makes the whole idea of Lincoln's ghost and presidential hauntings in general feel a lot more grounded. The last well-known sighting of Lincoln's ghost came in the 1980s from White House operations foreman Tony Savoy. He swore he saw Lincoln sitting quietly at the top of the stairs. What's interesting is that Lincoln's ghost is said to appear most often during times of national crisis. World War II, the Great Depression, the 60s unrest. It's almost as if he shows up when the country needs him. Still watching, still guarding, still unfinished with his work. Of course, it wasn't just strangers who believed Lincoln's spirit lingered. His own wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, was convinced of it. After their son Willie died in the house in 1862, she turned to spiritualism and held those seances in the Red Room. She claimed both Willie and Abraham visited her after his death, standing at the foot of her bed. To Mary, the veil between the living and the dead wasn't just thin, it was practically transparent inside the White House. Willie Lincoln himself is another ghost tied to the mansion, not just through the seances. After his death at just 11 years old, staff in the Grant administration swore they saw him wandering the halls in the 1870s. Then, more than a century later, in the 1960s, Linda Bird Johnson, daughter of President Lyndon B. Johnson, reported seeing Willie's spirit as well. So what we can see so far is that it seems that once you've lived in the White House, you may never truly leave. Beyond Lincoln, the White House is filled with other restless spirits. Some former presidents, some first ladies, and even a few who were never meant to be here at all. Take Thomas Jefferson, the nation's third president, was known for his love of music, especially the violin. Even in death, it seems he hasn't put it down. Late at night, visitors and staff alike have reported faint strains of violin music drifting from the yellow oval room. There's never anyone there, just an empty chamber echoing with the ghost of a melody. It's easy to imagine Jefferson himself still playing to soothe the burdens of leadership. Another lingering presence is William Henry Harrison. He holds the tragic record of being the first president to die in office, serving only 31 days before pneumonia cut his term, and his life short. Some say his unfinished presidency left his spirit unsettled. Harrison is believed to haunt the White House attic, where muffled footsteps and unexplained noises have been reported. A man with so little time and power, still wandering the rafters, as if he's not ready to leave. Then there's John Tyler. He wasn't exactly the most beloved president, but his personal life left its own mark on the mansion. Tyler married Julia Gardner, a woman 30 years his junior, while in office. According to legend, his spirit is still spotted in the Blue Room, forever proposing to his bride. It's a love story stuck on repeat, a memory that plays itself out again and again under the White House chandeliers. But circling back to Truman, he had a particularly vivid perspective on the White House spectral residence. Beyond hearing footsteps and rapping doors, he once described, half in jest, half in awe, imagining Andrew Jackson and Theodore Roosevelt arguing over Franklin Roosevelt's legacy. It's a surreal thought. Two larger-than-life presidents, long gone from the living world, lingering in the halls to debate the deeds of one of their successors. That vision perfectly captures the idea that the White House isn't just a home or an office. It's a crossroads of history, where personalities and legacies refuse to rest quietly. Not all spirits here are presidential, though. One of the more unusual ghosts is David Burns, the man who originally owned the land where the White House now stands. He was reluctant to give up his property, but George Washington personally negotiated with him. Perhaps Burns never really forgave the deal, because his voice has reportedly been heard echoing in a yellow oval room. The most detailed account comes from Lillian Rogers Parks, a seamstress who worked at the White House for decades and later wrote a memoir about her time there. She told the story of a valet during the Roosevelt administration who heard a voice echo through the yellow oval room, declaring, quote, "I'm Mr. Burns," end quote. Thinking it was Secretary of State James Burns, the valet went looking for him, only to find out Burns hadn't been in the building at all. A similar incident was reported during Truman's administration, which only cemented the legend of David Burns as one of the White House's most enduring and unnerving spirits. The mansion also carries echoes of its dark chapters. Take Anna Surratt, the daughter of Mary Surratt, the first woman executed by the U.S. government for her role in Lincoln's assassination conspiracy. According to lore, Anna's spirit can be heard pounding on the White House doors at night, begging for her mother's life to be spared. Imagine being a guard on duty, only to hear desperate knocking and a woman's pleas echoing through the darkness. And then there's one of the strangest hauntings of all, the Thing. In 1911, staff reported the ghostly presence of a teenage boy roaming the White House. People claimed they felt an invisible hand pressed down on their shoulder, like someone standing behind them. The story spread quickly enough that President Taft personally stepped in, threatening to fire anyone who repeated it. That only made the legend grow. To this day, the Thing remains one of the White House's great mysteries. unnerving, unpredictable, and nameless. And the encounters don't end in the 19th or early 20th centuries. Even modern presidents and their families have reported eerie happenings. President Reagan once admitted that his dog, Rex, would refuse to enter the Lincoln bedroom, snarling and whimpering at the doorway, but never crossing the threshold. Animals are often said to be sensitive to spirits, and Rex's behavior only adds fuel to Lincoln's ghostly reputation. The Bush twins, Jenna and Barbara, also had their share of scares. As teenagers living in the White House, they were awakened one night by the sound of piano music drifting through the fireplace in their room. As Jenna described on the Kelly Clarkson show, quote, "Our phone rang and I woke up, and all of a sudden we heard like 1920s piano music coming out of our fireplace. It was like the middle of the night, and you can feel the music out of the fireplace." End quote. The chilling part? There was no piano, no musician, no party going on downstairs. Just the faint, ghostly notes of 1920s era music echoing from nowhere. Michelle Obama has spoken about her own unsettling moments in the White House too. She described lying in bed at night and feeling a tug at her feet, as if something unseen was gnawing or pulling at her. Staff too have whispered about hearing footsteps in empty halls, knocks on locked doors, and voices when no one else is around. And these aren't isolated cases. Across decades, through the Johnsons, the Clintons, and beyond, the first families have admitted strange sights and sounds in the mansion. The White House may be constantly renovated and modernized, but its past doesn't loosen its grip. The walls hold on to history, and history finds its ways of making itself known. Political figures aren't the only people to experience weird happenings. Visitors, locals, and everyday passerbys have reported their own eerie encounters around the White House. More on the ghosts of the White House, right after this. One Reddit user described feeling an overwhelming sense of unease while approaching the mansion, noticing a sudden drop in temperature and the unmistakable feeling of being watched. No apparitions, just a presence that lingered. Another account comes from someone touring the White House who overheard muffled, heated voices arguing in the Red Room, even though the room was completely empty at the time. And outside the gates, a resident walking through Lafayette Park late at night reported seeing shadow figures moving among the trees, figures that seemed to vanish when approached. These experiences, though less documented than the presidential sightings, suggest that the White House exerts a strange energy on anyone who comes near, proving that its haunted reputation extends far beyond its famous residents. But beyond the stories of individual ghosts, there's something inherently fascinating about why the White House itself captivates our imagination. It's not just the presidents, the political drama, or the architecture. It's the weight of history that hangs in every room. Americans are drawn to the idea of a haunted White House because it reflects our own national fears and anxieties. The turmoil of war, the tragedy of assassinations, the human cost of power. Consider William Henry Harrison, who gave a 2-hour inaugural speech in freezing rain, only to die a month later. Does that unfinished life linger in the rafters? Or Abraham Lincoln, whose assassination shook the nation to its core? Do those horrors echo silently through the halls? Some paranormal researchers argue that the White House isn't just haunted, it's a portal. Think about it. This is a building that's been the stage for wars, assassinations, political upheavals, and personal tragedies. Every president, every first family, every staffer carries their energy into those walls. If ghosts really are a kind of leftover imprint of human emotion, then the White House should be overflowing with them. Mediums who have visited the White House have described it as a psychic hotspot, a place where the veil between the living and the dead is unusually thin. They point to the sheer concentration of power and decision-making that happens there. Some even take it further, suggesting that the White House acts like a beacon, drawing spirits in, even those not tied directly to the building. That might explain why reports range from presidents to complete unrelated figures like Anna or the Nameless Thing of 1911. If the house really is some kind of doorway, it could be pulling in echoes and entities from across American history. Of course, with a portal comes darker speculation. A few psychics have gone so far as to claim that the White House harbors not just restless spirits, but something malevolent, a force that feeds on fear, stress, and tragedy. After all, it's a place where massive decisions about life and death are made every day. Could that be why so many first families report unease at night? Why do pets seem to get spooked? Why do staff hear knocks, footsteps, and whispers even when rooms are empty? Whether you believe in the portal theory or not, it adds another layer to the White House's haunted reputation. It's not just about individual spirits anymore. It's about the building itself, being alive with energy, almost as if history is looping and replaying within its walls. In the end, the White House is more than just a building. It's a living archive of history, a witness to every triumph, failure, and tragedy that has shaped the nation. The ghosts that linger in its halls, whether real or imagined, serve as a reminder of the human weight of power and the passage of time. And walking those corridors, it's impossible not to feel the layers of life that came before. Presidents pacing in thought, children playing in empty rooms, and the endless parade of decisions that have defined a nation. Maybe the hauntings are real, maybe they are imagined, but either way, they invite us to reflect on the people, the history, and the spirit that make 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue one of the most extraordinary homes in the world. Whether it's a long-dead president pacing the halls, a grieving daughter banging on locked doors, or a mysterious boy pressing on your shoulder, the White House is more than just the seat of the American government. It's a place where the past lingers, a mansion alive with memories, and apparently ghosts. So, what do you think? Are spirits really out there? Be sure to follow us on Instagram at OutThereCryptids for episode posts, updates, and more. Join our community on Discord, where we dive even deeper into the mysteries we explore here on the podcast. The link can be found on our Instagram. And if you're loving the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. As a patron, you'll get exclusive perks like bonus episodes, early access, and even surprises. See you next week.